Welcome to the Brew Knowledge Podcast, brought to you by Brewlogix. Marketing is another form of communication that requires the right message to the right audience at the right time. Our next guest is an expert in crafting these messages to the next generation of taproom patrons, and he's here to help you improve your social media marketing plan. But first, Dan had another great question.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode, Questions with Dan. I have another good question leading to you guys, Josh and Jeremy. When we're getting ready to talk to Evan Blum with Brewed, who's I would say, expert in the social media. We're going to talk Gen Z social media and how brands can really touch base with them. But from your guys, your platforms, your expertise, I would like to hear some ways that, from an educational standpoint, both of you guys have education in your in your resumes. How could you tell somebody or coach somebody who's running a social media program to talk about beer in a way that is relevant to not only the experts of the craft beer world, but also the curious, the craft beer curious people? Some tips that you can give them to help make content. Hey, talk about this when you're talking about products, or what are the important key points when you're talking about craft beer? Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the key is defining your voice, defining your audience, and then kind of straddling the line a little bit. Like once you know kind of what your ideal follower looks like, kind of going a little bit more advanced and also going a little bit less advanced and kind of running this gamut. We used to call it sneak teaching, where when we would create resources, we would slide in these fun facts. I've spoken about romance many a times before, but being able to throw things in, whether it's the origin of a beer style or the advanced flavor notes, or if you want to talk about levels of bitterness. Again, I think it's going to be specific to your situation, what you produce, what type of products you produce, who your audience is, but being able to make sure that you're giving somebody an opportunity to ask a question. Like, hey, I've never heard of perceived bitterness. I've never heard of cold IPA. And then it gives you an opportunity to create more content. And now you can go answer those questions. And maybe that kind of leads into, you should be soliciting these questions, and saying like, hey, what's something that we've talked about that you've never heard about? Or that you didn't understand, or what's something that, you think everybody should know, and then you're getting engagement through your community. So I think that's kind of the key, is straddling that line, pushing boundaries a little bit, and then ultimately, as you push those, you'll realize that you've got to push a little bit further as your audience kind of starts to learn more and grow with you, which I think is a great thing. You're not just providing a beverage, but you're providing an experience through your social.
Yeah, Jeremy, what do you think?
I was thinking about this, and I'm not going to teach anyone any advanced modern techniques on social media marketing anytime soon. So however that works, it's always changing. So that's up to you to keep up with it. But, frankly, the thing that doesn't change and hasn't really ever changed is how to tell a good story. And first of all, to kind of take a page out of the mental health industry, if you will, is one, we need to meet consumers where they are. We have these people who are like homebrewers and like really good at what they do. They want to talk details. They want to talk brewing techniques. They want to talk flavors. And then you have someone like my father who's just like, I just want something that's yellow and fizzy. What do you got? Meet people where they are and share with them that story, that romance that Josh talks about. Pepper in some details, like ABV is 5%, so it's not gonna end your day sooner than you'd like it to, and kind of get that story along, and then kind of set the hook for later on. It's like, oh, and if you like this, I've got a beer I want you to try later on, or next week we're putting out this amber lager. If you like this, you're going to love that. Come back and see me. And frankly, it's just storytelling. It's like selling in a ethical productive, experiential way. It's kind of sharing that knowledge, but it all starts with meeting people where they are and leading them one step further. Is basically what it all comes down to.
So yeah, thank you guys for both of that. And I think you guys both kind of hit on this in a similar point of you got to know your customer, you got to know where they are, but also help them grow and
Yes.
also open the gate a little bit lower so that people can feel welcome to come in and they know they're going to learn something and they don't feel intimidated. So you guys are great educators. You guys have both taught me tons of stuff about beer. So thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The Brewlogix craft beverage community drives on-premise profitability through our unified technology platforms. Go to brewlogix.com to get started.
And now, our interview with co-founder of Brewed, Evan Blum. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brew Knowledge Podcast. We are helping taproom operators do a better job. And today, our next guest is going to help you do a better job reaching out to those younger of age drinkers and how to find them, how to connect with them, and how to bring them to your establishment. Our next guest, Evan Blum, you are the co-founder of Brewed. I'm going to let you explain all that because, I've got gray in my beard. I can't explain these fandangled new young kid things. Evan, thank you for being here. Please do a better job at introducing yourself. But tell us about your background and what Brewed is.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jeremy, for having me, and thank you, Dan, for having me. So, Brewed is a marketing company with a very high focus on social media and connecting Gen Z to craft beer to breweries. My background came in supply chain. I worked supply chain for Nestle Waters. I did 3 years in corporate purchasing, and essentially my desires weren't really being met and like doing something. I felt like a just piece of the corporate structure, and like I want to have fun in a few I don't want to do this for 30 years and then kind of be unhappy. So what do I enjoy? Me and my friends enjoy going and exploring different breweries. So that's where we really got started, and then from there noticed a lack of, let's say, connection between breweries and like just younger audience, and kind of just rolled into what we have started to build at Brewed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of breweries are kind of set up for people my age, so
Yeah.
so
A
we
little
we need
bit.
it. We need to evolve for sure.
It's been fun to know you for a while, Evan, and to really see, to what Jeremy just said, kind of that gap that's out there in the marketplace right now with tap rooms and the younger generation of customers. From your standpoint and some of your expertise, what is like the demographic of the social user? We'll call it Gen Z, who's drinking alcohol. Like, is there some kind of identifiers that you see, and what are some metrics that you're looking at while you're trying to identify that and try to get to that customer?
Yeah. So metrics, I mean, from a taproom perspective, the next generation is very much on like Instagram and TikTok. And from like one of the first pieces of things, most of the breweries and tap rooms are primarily operating through Facebook. I would say Facebook and Instagram, but both of those where I think there's just a little bit of a miss there. But the way that we go about it is it really comes down to us building content that would prove something that Gen Z or a younger market would want to kind of identify with. And that's really where we strive to build these messages and just presenting something in a really fun, different, unique way. Almost in a lot of circumstances, not even like it's not heavily beer focused. And that helps younger people and like just Gen Z from a 101 level be like, oh, beer, as long like with other alcohols too, just like, oh, beer too, and now we can learn about beer. and then we can help kind of piggyback on that and show in a highlighted light, and then bring it into a more detailed version. But it's like getting that introduction there, and that's really what we focus on. And
What from an operator standpoint, this is something that we deal with here at Brewlogix. Is you did say like Instagram and TikTok are like where this younger generation is living.
mhm,
Like I think sometimes literally living in those
yeah,
applications. You know, when in the old ways we're focused on Facebook. Everybody knows it. That there's a ton of things on there and you can easily promote and things like that. When you're creating content, is there pros, is there cons to trying to create like a blanket content that's going to hit? Like I don't want to give up on Facebook, but like how about we just take this designed reel for Instagram and throw it on Facebook? Like can you explain some of the differences there, and
yeah,
like there's different strategies behind the type of content you're building for different platforms?
yes. Well, to start off, like, just saying Gen Z lives on their phone is very true. I think one of the studies like we looked at, about or Gen Z is on their phone for about 7.5 hours to 9 hours per day.
Wow.
And if you can
Great.
just think about that, that's such a difference from what somebody that might be in their 40s or 60s are on their phone. So yeah, and then, like, that's just one of the things. And exactly, though, like, every medium is kind of ran by a different algorithm, and to understand each different algorithm, you have to curate content for each of those pretty differently. They're all just built different. You want to cater towards that audience that might be on that system. So if you're going for Facebook, creating content that is more for a older type beer drinker and maybe more beer focused content on Facebook would work better with an audience from that aspect. If you're on Instagram, Instagram pretty much houses everybody from all generations. So that could be more of a wider variety of what you're putting out there, as far as your content goes. And then TikTok, much younger. So almost just kind of base level of, like, maybe just fun things happening at a brewery. It doesn't, like, one thing that I always see is a, a lot of breweries try really, really hard to market the beers and the differences in the beers and the craft style. And I don't, and and I get that, because that's where everybody fell in love with the beer and with the craft. But when you're looking to engage a younger audience, they don't have the same love for that you might in that moment. And how do you show them why to love it is not going to be the same way you do.
This
And
is
that's kind of where,
this is daggers to Jeremy's heart right now. They don't love the style right out of the
and
gate.
it's,
It and but that's okay because
Yeah.
in all reality, neither did I in the beginning.
Yeah.
There is a, I tell people all the time, once upon a time, Jimi Hendrix, and if you know who that is,
yeah.
Google him. Once upon a time, Jimi Hendrix picked up a guitar and sucked. So there's always a beginning to everything, and that's
Hmm.
totally okay. That's a lot of the work I do is to help those people who are just beginning with beer how to find this wonderful world beyond the glass. But you're talking about connecting with this generation as a whole, but I'm sure there's a lot more nuance to that. And then there's
Oh yeah.
also how do you talk to people my age? How do you talk to people Dan's age? How do you talk to people your age? And and frankly, as a taproom manager, it's like, or as a social media person for these taproom managers, like that's a lot of work. That's a lot of different messaging. Can you unpack that? Can you what do you make of that?
Yeah, and I think I'll start with, I believe me and just Brewdad are in a unique situation as far as I'm 26 years old, so I am at the very beginning of Gen Z, and the so I have that experience with. I grew up and I didn't have an iPhone. I had a flip phone. That was my first phone. So I have that what you could call old world, like very loosely, but
Please. No, just kidding.
but I have the experience without being fully immersed into social media and how things can work in that sense. And I'm able to like kind of bridge that with people I speak with that own these breweries and operate these breweries because I do have and we do have that knowledge. And then yet I have a ton of knowledge. I also grew up on social media. Like it is second nature to me and anybody in my generation. And then I have a ton of younger cousins that are keeping me up to date. And at this point, for some of their stuff, I'm also like a little taken back from. So things move really quickly, and it is a lot to unpack, especially for taproom managers and social media managers. The one of the big things I think is they are almost using social media as just a number or a box to kind of hit sometimes, and where it does need to be much more involved and much more intricate, much more thought out. It's genuinely, it is a science. It's using like brain chemistry to interact with different things. Like it's so impactful for the way that you're communicating, and it's something that isn't just a okay, we have an Instagram page or we have a TikTok. It's so you might have that, but what are the messages you're putting out? Are they clean? Are they something that people would actually believe in too? And it is hard to manage. And it is something where if you don't have an expert already in your brewery or in your tap room to take this and understand this, there's going to be that disconnect. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing now.
Can From that standpoint, when a brewery tap room is looking to, let's say, like, okay, I understand it, Evan. I get that we have to play ball in all the arenas, and it's got to have someone that's just really focused on. I kind of took away this, but really building content for the algorithms per each app, right? Like you're not going to the app, you're building it for the algorithm in those
Yeah.
apps. How do you define or set KPIs, but like define the ROI that these social medias are giving back to you as a brand? How, like, what are there some things that you look at specifically? What should owners and operators be looking at when they say, okay, this person's doing this much for me, I can see the return on my investment, I'm paying this person?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is genuinely been one of our like biggest hurdles right now to really prove that ROI in the metrics. The one thing it is all marketing, and this marketing doesn't directly, you can't track who after sees X will come into your brewery or your tap room. And that is a tough part to prove. But then you also look at your tap room and say to yourself, oh, why aren't there a lot of younger people in here? Or where is Gen Z at? And that's kind of the gap. And it is hard to prove. So one thing that like we do with the places we work with is we can look at all the metrics that you've had in the past, kind of where you're at, number of views, number of likes, your engagement, as we help develop a program and work through your content strategy. If that increases, so do your views increase? Does your metrics increase? And then we can help and look specifically pointed at, did you see any increase in sales on maybe a specific day after a specific post or after something went more viral, etc. And that's kind of how we've been working at it now. But yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that's been tough to get. That we spent $5, now we see $8 coming in directly based off of this post.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you can just say like, is Gen Z showing up in your tap room? That's a great kind of just visual identifier to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what are the let me back up real quick, because as of right now that we're recording this, we're getting ready for the Paris Olympics, and before every Olympics, as you guys know, they have this huge not well, there's a ceremony, of course, but there's the whole of passing the torch, and that's where we get the phrase passing the torch. But they're literally like the torch is traveling. That fire is traveling to end up at the Paris Olympics to light the big torch, and so, but as a metaphor, there's this whole thing about passing the torch from one to the other to kind of show unity, right? There's that whole thing. So when I look at the beer world, the beer legacy, the beer history, I see tens of thousands of years of people brewing and drinking beer. We study the history of people coming through from the monks, the alewives, the big conglomerates, the 1700s, 1800s, all the innovations that people created to make better beer that now we take for granted, like thermometers and stuff like that, right? There's a huge legacy. There's a huge story behind this one pint of beer in my hand. How do you bring these younger drinkers, the Gen Zers and the millennials, as they become of drinking age? How do you bring them into the fold of this torch sharing legacy of beer?
Yeah. I mean, that's, I think the big question that maybe everybody's kind of working on right now. And I think we have our unique perspective on it, and that is to connect people through social media. Because that is where the next generation is. So if you look at it from a beer standpoint, and beer has remained the same, and it has all this history throughout the years. But if all this history is only being shared maybe over the bar, or pretty much over the bar, or word of mouth, people that just have been drinking beer for that way forever at this point, that message is not going to be spread to the next generation if the breweries, tap rooms don't kind of embrace the next generation, and also try to create the next piece of that on social media and bridge that gap a little bit. I think it's twofold in that sense. I think it's a lot of, most of the owners, the way that I always see it is most of the brewery owners, potentially in their 50s or 60s, 40s, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, and they've just been so passionate, and they've built this incredible craft that they love, but they might not then understand when somebody from Gen Z sees most of their content online, and just really that's where they kind of see and then use their purchasing power. There's that disconnect to also present that on there. And that's kind of one of the things that I've seen. And that's where we are like trying to strategize to really help market our brand, and just build this community of something that Gen Z can associate with beer. And then additionally help tap rooms and help all these bars do the same with their own brands. And that's where we see it.
When it comes to Gen Z, I've heard many things. I think one is they want to be a part of something with a brand, right? It's the sense of community. It's the sense of they know that they're doing something great, sustainability, insert whatever, push or
Mm-hmm.
mission it is. Do you have any insights on something that Gen Z is getting behind that's really important to them? Is it the things I said? Is it something else that you're seeing?
I mean, there's a few that are like kind of wide variety, like social change, like environmental change. Like those are like some bigger ones that are very like base level. Everybody's kind of like looking at.
Right.
Um, but it really, I think, is just like, do they align with your company's view? It's like that individualistic in a lot of ways, and like how transparent that you might be. And that is kind of where I see that side of things, because it could be like, when I look at, there's a beer brand in Brooklyn where I'm at, where I currently live. It's called Talia, female owned, women brewed beer. And in the marketing of their campaign is beer brewed for like everyone. And that tap room does the most killing I've probably ever seen in like any brewery I've been to. And like it's just crazy to see that. And it's not just the traditional sense of what you might see a brewery as, but how do you invite and just welcome everybody else? Another great example is Love City in Philadelphia. Does another fantastic job, but just very open to just kind of everything and allowing anybody to be in it.
It's a unique, like, I love that the industry is opening their arms to everybody right now. Jeremy, I know you've probably had some conversations around that, but go ahead. I
Yeah.
know you're going to say something.
No. I love that all inclusivity, and there's a lot of discussion about diversity and inclusion and all that sort of stuff too. And that goes across genders, that goes across races, that goes across orientations, but that really needs to go across generations as well.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm loading a question in the chamber as we speak, but I do want to say something real quick because you're mentioning that older generation between their 40s and 60s. Well, I'm right in the smack dab middle of that, and so this is a little PSA to all of my Gen Xers out there. It's remember the sage advice of seek to understand before trying to be understood. There's a lot of benefit that comes from these young kids these days who are on their phones. My son plays video games all the time, and I grew up going outside, free ranging, drinking out of a hose, all these crazy, potentially life altering things. And we need to understand that there are pros and cons to my son and other people spending all this time on their phones and their video games. They will be the next leaders in tech because they just understand, unlike we ever possibly could.
Yep.
And but there will be some downsides to that too. But there's cycles. Maybe our grandchildren will just be like, I just want to go outside and get off these screens, whatever. That being said, we need to understand who these younger generations are, who these people are, before we start trying to dismiss it. We need to understand that there's a lot of benefit there. So that being said, how do people of my generation connect in a fruitful way with people from your generation?
And I guess it depends, like, from what aspect are we looking at too? If it's from the bar owners, brewery owners,
Well,
just
let's just say it's my
yeah,
generation that is that let's just say that for simplicity, we're the ones that own all the tap rooms,
yes,
for the
yeah,
most part, and we want to say, "Hey, kid, come on in. This place is great. I've got some great stories for you. I know you and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on these things. That's okay. That's part of the diversity. That's okay. I'd like to know more about your world, and then I want to share you a little bit about mine.
yeah.
How do you make that connection?"
I think it's genuinely from my standpoint. I think it's trying to reach that arm out is reaching that arm out through social media though, and from being online, and because that's where they're at. Um, and
Can't be
just
af- you can't be afraid to get behind a camera. That's what I would say, right?
yeah, I mean, you got to be just open and like present your brand in the fun way that's so you guys, like every individual place. That's why I love breweries. Is every spot is so uniquely different, and that's why you own a brewery. That's why everybody is involved in that business, and everybody thinks that this way is maybe a little cooler than that way, and that's amazing. And that's what brings, like, that's why everybody wants to explore these breweries. So how do you take that passion that you have and put that online so someone younger might be able to see that too? I think that's kind of where that extension of now someone might come into your tap room and then you can tell that story in a more detail.
What's as a tip, I'm gonna ask you to give away some of your business here. As a tip that you would want to share, if you had to just say one thing to every taproom owner, hey, here's one piece of content, or here's one thing you can do to get better today. What would you tell them to do? right away to just maybe touch more of that Gen Z. And it can be specific to an Instagram reel that highlights this or whatever it is, just kind of just a tip that you can throw out there.
Or I might even just add like a mentality. I think the mentality might
Yeah.
be a good way to approach.
Yeah, so I think the best tip is you need a strong hook. In videos, most of your audience will leave after probably 5 seconds. Which is crazy. It's a crazy thing, but if you don't have a strong hook that then keeps somebody there for the rest of your video, they're gonna leave. And when you number one, if you don't talk in your videos too, that's something that there's no hook to even kind of engage with. But yeah, like building a really strong hook, and like for example, like we went to, or this is a Brewed app perspective, but this brewery has coffee and beer, and then you show a really cool highlight of that. But if you're looking at your own like brewery's perspective, it could be like this brewery or this beer took us 3 days to make. I don't know, something crazy, something that has a specific number to it that like kind of like wow somebody, like, oh my god, wait, what? And then that allows you to tell more of a story too. It's really about telling your story, and that's the hardest part for you as a brewery owner. You have, yet again, it's you have that social media box and you post something, but there's not much behind that. It's maybe you just take a quick video of your tap room. That's great for maybe an audience that already loves you, but that's not great for an audience you're trying to build. That doesn't provide them with any necessary details about who you are, what you're doing, where any of that. There's just so much more to be said, and that's kind of where I think just it is going.
On a previous podcast, I don't remember which one it was. I had mentioned this. I had saw this locally, and I just thought to my mind, like, what did they just post this? Like, what did they think the return? It was a post of like
Hmm.
their chicken finger dinner. And they posted it. I've seen thousands of baskets of chicken fingers across my life. If you have kids, you've probably seen a million chicken finger baskets. But that was
Yep.
kind of my point where I was like, you can't just post something of like, hey, check out this picture. You have to do something, to your point, engaging to tell the story of, hey, come in. This is the kind of experience. It's going to be unique. This is the kind of experience that you're going to get. It's an experiential, you good?
Yep. All good.
It's an experiential environment these days that people are wanting to find. So to your point, it is like, don't just post a photo, get detailed, throw the hook right out of the gate
Hmm.
to draw them in within that 5 seconds, and keep after it.
Yeah,
Rinse, wash, repeat.
and that gives another point that I'd love to really quickly talk about. Like Gen Z is about experience. Like besides the video behind it, but like they're looking for experiences. And when breweries offer cool experiences, that also brings in a crowd. And that's within the craft beer community. There's all this fight with the use of a flight glass and like flight paddle. I love it. I love them, and I get a lot of I get a lot of hate and I get a lot of love for it. But it's because you can try so many different things and you build that experience. You're like, whoa, that one's cool, that one's different, that one's that. And it also allows you to kind of taste and figure out what your palate is. And but Gen Z is just like, that's an experience. Flights is one of the things that made me kind of love breweries. And if I'm an advocate for anybody else that is my age, kind of just speaking that, that's something that I think is important. Um, and just from a taproom perspective, you also make more money on flights. Glassware we know is a pain, but regardless, but like something that we've been working on is different events to bring a bunch of breweries together in unique different ways. Um, just kind of building that holistic community and something that you couldn't get somewhere else. And it is about experience and kind of just embracing that type of next level of how to bring somebody to your brewery.
I love it.
I love it. And that is falling in line with really what all of our previous guests have been talking about. All the same thing. We're repeating ourselves now, which is fantastic because anyone who's paying attention and wants people to do better are seeing the same signs. And so I appreciate your thoughts on that. Um, uh, unless unless you have another question,
I got I got one
yeah,
in
hit it.
leading out the exit door here. I want you to what you just said, bringing breweries together. We just participated in a mutual social media event. I'm going to call it an event because it was an event.
Mm-hmm.
You could how many breweries collaborated together, and what was the reach basically overall for the of these collaborators? You don't have to give away the details of it. I
Yeah.
want people to come find you and learn more about how you're just shaking this industry up in a great way. But it was an awesome thing that you put together. But yeah, talk about just how many breweries collaborated together for this one event to help everybody rise together and the reach that you guys were able to get to.
Yeah. So we did an event, I believe it was early July or what have you, but 25 different breweries, all from a radius of Philadelphia, maybe 30 miles, let's say, all posted one uniquely different post on Instagram and Facebook at the same exact time. And it kind of took social media by storm in that sense. And it went out to a potential audience of, I believe, 550,000 people, like just accounts, to all kind of go. And then to be a part of this event, it's a scavenger hunt. So you had to search every brewery's participating profile to find a clue, to piece back together, to win tickets to, this was a beer fest and a bunch of merch from all these breweries. But people that participated, there was 270 people that messaged us within 3 days, which was insane. People that participated had to view all these new breweries. How many places have never been heard of before that got eyes on this today? And that's kind of one of the fun things that we were able to bring together. And this was over the course of literally clicking a post button. That was really it. And we have some more exciting things kind of in the works with that, and bringing in tap rooms too. So that
It's
is to come.
that is my sales pitch too. If you are if you're looking into marketing and you don't understand it, get a hold of Brewed. They will help you get more reach in fun, unique ways to connect with this Gen Z. So,
Yeah, totally.
hats off to you, Evan and Jeremy. I'll let you lead us out the door.
Well, and we went a little bit long today for a good reason, so thank you for the extra time. But give it, my last question to tag onto that is, how can people find you?
Yeah, easy. Go on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or TikTok at Brewed, BREWEDAT. Sometimes you miss that E and then people aren't understanding. But then
Yeah.
we also have a podcast called the Brewed Podcast, and that's on Spotify, that's on Instagram, and anywhere you can get podcasts as well. We just feature a bunch of guests that are brewery owners, and then just people in and around the Philly kind of beer beverage space, to just bring an outside perspective also into beer, just like connect everything and lead some dots back to beer. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I love
So,
it.
so just to clarify that it's not like, oh, I'd brewed at, it's not that. It's yesterday we brewed at the brewery. So the brewed at the past
Yeah,
tense, right? Okay.
that was the idea. The idea was, okay, brewed at Slack Tide, brewed at Love City, brewed at
Love it.
it could be brewed at any brewery. So that was the name.
Awesome.
Hats off to
Evan.
you all, man, and
Yeah.
thank you, Evan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
The advice on this show is obviously not a one-size-fits-all solution. The goal is to provide ideas that will either work for you or stimulate other ideas on how you can improve your business. We hope these conversations were helpful, but let us know what works well for you. Until next time, cheers.